the. Well, that's fine.
It's right.
Like watching. But really what it's able to do is really the bottom line for Sarasota Memorial Healthcare System is healthcare outcomes for the citizens. And it's really provided a really unique lens to be able to make the decisions that it makes about the growth in services and the geographic growth, which I'm most excited about. If you're gonna have a community hospital, I think community-wide access is really the most important thing. I don't wanna drive an hour to get to an ER when my kids, who were both born at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, are sick or break a bone, which my son will probably do before too long. But that's really the benefit of a community hospital, is to focus only on community healthcare outcomes and not profit and not bottom line. And I think that's a real blessing that we have here. And that's kind of why you have this unique system of a publicly elected hospital board that most people I talk to don't even know it exists. And when they find out it exists, they don't understand what it is. And so going back to what I was saying about the first piece, most of our charge is really on that fiduciary piece, making sure that the hospital is operating in a way that is going to allow it to continue to expand services and to continue to expand geographically. And that's not just our major hospital areas, it's also our outpatient centers, our urgent care centers, and making sure that when people aren't doing well and they need medical care, that they've got immediate access to high quality healthcare outcomes. And so as it, you don't want to seem too nerdy and on the financial side of things, but that's a big part of it. And then the other side of it really is a management and administrative oversight, is making sure that we've got a competent and capable chief executive in the seat that is driving both culture and strategic direction in the way that we think serves the people of Sarasota County the best. And I think, you can look at them and people ask, do we have a good hospital? I mean, and we have a brag sheet a mile long from independent third-party agencies that will tell you what they think about Sarasota Memorial Hospital System, but my own experience has been very good. And I think that's how we judge the chief executive, is what are the healthcare outcomes for Sarasotans when they come to Sarasota Memorial Healthcare System? How is that working? But the other thing that I think is important for what we do too is indigent care. And I think in the last year was something like Sarasota Memorial Healthcare System provided about $20 million in indigent care. And some of that's federally regulated. If you're a hospital, if someone comes into your emergency room, you have to screen them. You don't have a choice. And if they have an emergency condition, you have to provide for them. That is not an option that you have. And for me, I'd rather be able to move in that direction than have people, I don't know, dying in the yards and the streets and doing those things. And so the hospital provides a community service to the tune of $20 million a year to make sure. I will get to you. I'm finished. Not that I have anything to finish, but I'll finish that. Actually, let's go. What's the question?
Why is there partisan, the hospital board? Why is there Republican and a Democrat?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's a strange thing because it's not really, there's a number of offices that you've seen, and maybe the charter officials are one of those, that there's really no political philosophical lean towards what you're doing. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why it has to be a partisan thing. It would make just as much sense to me for it to be nonpartisan. It's the framework within which we're operating, but I don't know that I don't think good quality healthcare outcomes are a political issue. I think everybody is on the same side of the, whatever political lean you fall into. Look, when my kids were born at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, I wanted them to be good and healthy. When I was there ended up having back surgery when I went there, and my mom is there on a more frequent occasion, unfortunately. I don't care what the nurse's political affiliation is. I don't care what the emergency ER doctor is. What I want is to be able to walk out of there and be healthy. And so I don't think that's not a universally accepted thing that happens across political lines. And so and I don't know across those 200 that I mentioned of publicly elected hospital boards, what percentage of them are partisan versus nonpartisan. But to me, it's really centrally about healthcare outcomes for Sarasotans, and I don't know what the political divide across the room is. And when it comes to healthcare outcomes, I don't care. Is that helpful? But anyway, the indigent care part, and so that's a really central part of what we do here is, all the Baker Acts and the Marchman Acts that they all end up at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and we're proud to take care of them and make sure that people that need the help get the help that they want and the help that they really need, and assist hand in glove with the firefighters, the paramedics, the Sarasota Sheriff's Office, the City of Sarasota Police Department, the Northport Police Department, to make sure that when we have individuals that are taken into custody that need to be taken care of, that we're taking care of them. And I think that's an important component of a community. As Catherine mentioned, I've worked in economic development, and I think that my only opinion after years in that really is that communities compete on far fewer things than they think. There's really great, we have one of the best beaches on the planet here, but there's great beaches all over the place. There's great places to grab a hamburger or a hot dog, and there's art scenes. You can go to Nashville, you can go over there, but there's a couple of necessary conditions for a successful community. And if you do not have a good healthcare system, you're not going to thrive. It's just not going to happen. And that's the same with an educational system, the same with that safety system. If you don't have a good sheriff or police department or whatever you call it, if you don't feel safe in a community, if you're not educating your youth and you're not taking care of people who are sick, you can have as much nice restaurants and scenic views as you want. Those things don't work. And economic development's a part of that. If you can't get a good job, you won't stick around. And so for me, that's the big passion for me of this project is just the affinity I've had for the hospital system, my kids being born there, and just how critically important I think it is for the future of Sarasota County, because if we don't have a good healthcare system, one of the top reasons people cite for moving here and relocating here is the healthcare system. It's if you talk to any realtor, they will tell you that that's a central piece of what, we like to think it's the temperature and the beaches and all these things, but right up there is the education system and the healthcare system. People want to know they're taken care of. And so the board is really a hand in glove in that. And it's not that the board is totally disconnected from the doctors and the practice of the system. There's a lot of committees of physicians that make recommendations for quality standards and improvement standards that happen at the hospital to the board. So it's a hand in glove mentality between the board and the physicians and the chief executive. And so if you've all served on any nonprofit board, and I assume a good deal of you have, that's the mindset. You want to make sure that the organization is running on all cylinders. You want to make sure it has a competent, capable chief executive. You want to make sure it has the right strategic direction and the strategic plan to grow in the way it needs to serve whatever constituency it's involved with. And that's the core function of the board. And I think they've done, depending on what you think of, to me, the core outcome is mortality. Are we keeping people in a good position? And because to me, I just want to stay alive as long, keep the wheels on this thing as long as I can. And I think we do a really good job of that. I think that's a high quality system that we have. And so was that one breath?
Great one.
I don't know. I didn't want to get in too deep into it, but that was a great question. I'm happy to open up the floor to any other questions you may have.
And I
Yeah.
was gonna point out that you had given us this.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
and I did put up.
Oh, good.
What I did for you is identify like the job description, their core responsibilities, and then the financial and quality. I thought that was
Perfect.
just to give you.
No, that's great.
something to speak to.
That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too. And we had Catherine who passed those around as well.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yes, sir.
I'd heard that there was some talk about privatizing the hospital.
Yeah.
What's the situation there? Why would they want to do it? And
Yeah, so I don't know. I can't speak directly to why anybody would want to do it. And my position on it is, I think as a nonprofit public community hospital is the absolute best healthcare outcomes for Sarasotans. So I don't know why they would want to do it. I can speak kind of in my perspective of it, if that makes sense, but I don't want to speak on others' behalf. I don't like to do that, especially because I'm married. But the pandemic brought up a lot of consternation and rightfully so. It was a very stressful time for all of us, I think. And I think some people that looked at the way the healthcare system operated in the United States and really around the world were really frustrated. And what they, sometimes change is what people seek when they're not happy with how something went. And so privatization was the change. Is the standard is a nonprofit community hospital that operates independently. The change is privatization. And so when you're upset with something, you seek change. I mean, that's kind of human nature, I suppose. So I think if that's my perspective on it, I don't know how accurate that is because I'm not a proponent of privatizing the hospital system. And there's a number of different privatization forms. It's not singular, right? You can go, privatization could be selling to like an HCA or a private hospital. It can be privatization through a nonprofit route. There's a number of roads that you can go in privatization, but I don't think any of them are, I've not seen any evidence that any privatization plan would be better for the healthcare outcomes of Sarasotans. And so I think a lot of it is through just, it was an aggravating time and it was difficult. And it was heartbreaking in many respects. And so when you're in that state, change is the bastion of hope. And so that's kind of how I think the position of some people were, and they brought it up a couple years ago in terms of privatization. And I don't know that that's a dead issue for people that are upset with the hospital. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a non-starter. Yes, ma'am.
Not knowing a lot of background, so two questions. One is, you're running for the hospital board?
I am, yes.
And is that election going in the fall?
Sure, so there's two parts. So as the gentleman here mentioned, it's a partisan election, good, bad, or indifferent. And so there's a primary election on August 20th, and then there's a general election on November 5th. And so the primary is there are numerous Republicans running for each seat, so there is a primary election in the Republican Party. The Democrat Party is running candidates in each seat, with the unfortunate of one seat, a Democrat candidate passed away during the process, and so he's no longer in the race. But the Democratic Party is running candidates. They will not have a primary because they did not have more than one candidate running for each seat. So they will be on the ballot in November, on November 5th. And so the Republican Party has primaries on the 20th of this month, because if you can believe it, it's already August. And then the general election will be on November 5th.
And then my question is on to the factions that were interested in privatization. Tell me who that is, or like who is involved in that.
Sure.
Because I've seen DCs take over hospitals and places, and it's not a good outcome.
I think that's right. That's a difficult question for me to answer, because I don't want to speak on, I'm too Christian, I guess, my wife would say. So.
I mean, the fact that
Leaving women voters. Have that information.
is there a place to find it? Yeah, this is just putting on.
I'm trying, how can I say this in the most kind way? So so well, I would say it this way, there's no one running under a platform of privatizing the hospital. And I think certain people have found out that that's not a popular message. And so they're not leading with that message, and I think rightfully so. There are two candidates that are incumbents. And so I can say that there's Sarah Lodge is an incumbent, and Sharon DePeters is an incumbent. And so when you think about how the hospital's been run and what the policies that we've been doing, if you think about the incumbents as important to retain, that's a place that you might want to look at. So Sarah Lodge and Sharon DePeters are incumbents in those races, and they have been on the board. I think Sharon was, I think, a nurse at the hospital for some 20 plus years, and Sarah Lodge is the current chair of the board of the hospital. In the other race other than mine, it doesn't have an incumbent, Pam Beitlich, currently is getting ready to retire from running the women and children's operations at the hospital. And so she has very acute knowledge of operating the hospital and doing what she does there. And likewise had voiced a strong opposition to privatizing the hospital. And so those are the folks that I'm most familiar with. Again, it's always interesting to me, the question with an incumbent race is, well, if you like how things are going and they've done a good job, the incumbent has deserved an opportunity to continue operating in that capacity. Somebody challenging the incumbent would say, well, you've done a bad job and you need to be replaced. And so you may want to look to the incumbents in those two races, Sarah Lodge and Sharon DePeters, and say, hey, these are folks who are incumbents that have been on the board for a number of years, and we appreciate what they're doing. And you can look there, but you won't. Politics is interesting. And you won't find people out there clamoring to privatize the hospital because it's an unpopular message. And so no one's gonna be leading with that message because it just doesn't sell for the people of Sarasota County. But did I word salad that enough? Was that good?
Yeah, there's a cabal of folks under the title of medical freedom.
Uh,
They're trying to, and I don't fully understand their agenda. It sounds like it's anti-vax and anti-mask and things like that that are trying to take over
yeah.
compared to the new college takeover, a whole new philosophy of doing things. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I've had to talk about this a lot, and one of the challenges I have with this idea of medical freedom is who gets to define it? Who defines what medical freedom is? And to me, it cuts both ways, right? Physicians have the right to practice their medical license in the way that they've been educated and see fit. And I've experienced this in my medical history is, a medical professional can recommend a plan of care and I can either accept it or there's a whole idea that we have this second opinion model. Everyone knows that I want to go seek a second opinion. And so I don't know that we have a problem with medical freedom in the healthcare system. And I think it's a specter. People are running under it to scare you into thinking that you don't have the freedom that you already have. When you go to the hospital, you can get a second opinion and you can make decisions about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. I think the worst case scenario of medical freedom is what they want is the freedom as they define it. And so they only want you to have the medical care that they think is adequate for you. And they want to tell doctors how to be doctors. And I don't think that's okay. I don't think that does a lot to attract good doctors to our healthcare system. I think it will scare a lot of doctors away. I don't think we need to be meddling in people's medical licenses and making sure that they're, giving ibuprofen instead of aspirin or whatever it is. That's not what the board and the hospital should be doing. We should be creating the right atmosphere for medical innovation, the best quality healthcare outcomes. And so I think even if you ask the individuals that are running under the medical freedom slate as they are to define medical freedom, and there's 4 of them, I think you would get 4 different definitions because I think it's not really a definable thing. And I think what's important for all of you here is you define it the way you get to define it. And to me, having my kids born there and being in the ER and having my mom there, it's about, I feel comfortable that I'm always in control of the final say, that they make recommendations and I make decisions. And I've never experienced anything otherwise from the SMH system. And I've been to the urgent care clinics, I've been to the hospital itself, and that's been my experience. And I think that's important. I don't discount. I think that is a very important part of the healthcare system. If a doctor is telling you, hey, you need to take this medication, you don't feel comfortable with it, seek a second opinion. We shouldn't be forcing anything down anybody's throat or veins or anything like that. And there's other hospitals. We have competition in this town. You can go to Doctor's Hospital, you can go to Lakeland Branch Medical Center. There are other options. I think that's the ultimate medical freedom is you have options. You have a lot of choices here in this community. And there's absolutely no way that the healthcare system can force anything upon you, and they shouldn't. Is that helpful?
I think so.
Oh, wow, I don't know. Yes, sir.
Question, how many seats are on the board?
There are 9 seats on the board. So I'll try to explain it. It's a little confusing. So maybe it's not, so there are 3 at-large seats, and I'm running for one of them. And then there are 6 district seats. So there's a North District, a Central District, and a South District. And there are 2 seats in each district, but they're voted on countywide. You just have to live in the district to hold the seat. So there are 4 seats on the ballot this time, and the next cycle in 26, there'll be 5 seats. That's how it works.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Oh, boy, you covered a lot.
Was that helpful? I don't know. Was that good? Was that okay? Good. I never did. You never know. I feel like I'm boring when I talk to myself. I don't know.
This is great. One of the things I want you all to know is we did print out, and we have copies if you want to take them with you, the things that he sent to me today, which is direct from the hospital big manual, which is the job description of a board member. Well, we're not getting any pay. Single line, small.
They feed you lunch.
They do an excellent.
Chicken sandwich, the dining, you get a lunch. There you go.
Yeah, please feel free to take one of these, if you'd like to share it with somebody or talk about it, or just look and see, because, you know, it's a lot, and there's a lot of responsibility, and it's, I would hope a joy for them. That's what joy is hope for. Every time I hear the baby
That's the best.
chimes in there, and I might be getting some painful physical therapy, but I am always happy to hear that.
That's right.
There are good things. Please, go ahead. Yes.
Besides the chicken sandwich, you also, they have open to the public, an open mic that they can tell the board what they think should be done, so anybody who wants to.
That's right,
Up
yep.
there, yeah.
Yeah, it's six times a year, we have an open to the public meeting, and we have a time set aside for members of the public to speak as they wish on any issue, whether it's on the agenda or not. And again, that's the most important thing, I think that helps with the transparency of the hospital system, is that you can't walk into, and I don't need to pick on, because I know Bobby, who runs Doctor's Hospital, and they do a great job, I just, mention them because they're the other private hospital system in town. You can't walk into their board meetings. But you can walk into ours, and you can say your piece and express whether you had a good experience, a bad experience, and be open, and we want to hear what the public has to say, and so I think that's another benefit to your point about privatization is, you cannot show up at any private hospital board meeting and speak your piece. And I think that's important, I think people wanna, it's good to have innovation through collective thinking.
Thanks, Stephen.
One thing that we didn't touch on, and it may not be appropriate for you to even address it, but do you know what, if any, impact this recently passed medical bill of rights that was passed by the VLCC might have on the hospital and or the hospital board?
Yeah, I don't think anything. I think a lot of the things that are in there are actually things that we're already doing. And that's what I touched on with the medical freedom piece. It's a, we don't need to reaffirm the things that we're already doing. And and I think it's good to say that we have patient rights and patient advocacy. And, when my daughter was born, she was very sick. And, the culture of advocacy for me to be able to advocate for my daughter who was born with stage 4 cancer was really important for me. To be able to ask questions and to be able to say, hey, but I read medical journals about this and I saw this and to have doctors that are a part of that, I think it's super important. But it seems like a strange exercise to reaffirm things that are already true. If that makes people feel good, that's fine. But there's also no ordinances. It doesn't come with anything that's like, well, if you don't do these things, here's what happens. It's just a statement of, here's the things that we believe. And so it was already ratified and codified and it's in, and I don't think the hospital is operating any differently today than it was before.
What concerned me when I first read about it was that it sounded like from the resolution that they passed, that a person could come to Sarasota County with an active case of Ebola virus, and they could not be quarantined. That seemed to be kind of an implication and almost a legal imperative that was a part of that medical bill of rights. That concerned me. Maybe that's not how we read it.
I don't think to that specific case, it's not how I read it, but a lot of what we do as a hospital system is highly regulated. When you look at the hospital, I mentioned we have about a 1.8, we're gonna approach a $2 million budget. 70% of the revenues we get are Medicare and Medicaid. We're highly regulated by the federal government. We're highly regulated by the state government. So a lot of those type of things really aren't up to the hospital board as to how you operate. And you can figure out the gray areas to work in and where to push back. But when you're dealing with 70% of your revenue coming from the federal government and wanting to continue to operate high quality healthcare systems for the Sarasota County citizenry, it's not always that simple of passing a local ordinance for what you want to do and what you don't want to do, because there's different layers of, and I haven't talked to the attorney at the healthcare system of the different layers of what county government says, what state government says, and what federal government says. And when those things conflict, what happens? But to me, the most important thing is that we're staying open. Whether it's through Ebola or COVID or anything else, there's broken bones, there's babies to be born, there's strokes happening, there's cardiac arrests happening, there's real problems happening amongst the healthcare of our citizenry. And so as a board member, it's like, well, what do we do to make sure we're maintaining as much and as high quality healthcare for the people? And so if you want medical freedom, I forget what they called it, the resolution. Most of the things I saw in there, I think we already do. And the rest of it, I don't think comes with any real statutory ordinance that would change, but I think we're operating the same way today as we were before.
Any other questions?
This isn't a question, I just wanted to mention that the League of Women Voters, if you go to their website, they have videos of candidate forums that they held for the health board and for the school board. So you can view the actual forum. You can see Kevin.
If you're not done listening to me.
Yeah, you can
I
see.
can talk some more.
Well, thank you for coming. You bet, you bet.
Thank you all so much.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I learned a lot, I worked at that hospital, and I wanted to tell you that, as an employee, you know, you have a very different viewpoint. You just follow the rules and do your work, and you have your own license and you do your thing. But it is very interesting, I don't recall ever at that hospital feeling that a good idea or something innovative. I think I invented one thing that we used in my department, and it had to do with filing notes because, you know, physicians write terribly, as you know that, right? So they had to learn how to use the computer and type their prescription orders in there. And we all got computers eventually. That was really good. So I'm just telling you, sometimes these are things that people that work know what's needed, you know, and there's a freedom to do that, to make sure everybody does it well and does it right. So anyway, we can move on now to other things, but I'm so glad Kevin could come today, and many of us have known him in other circumstances. He continues to be a vice president at Moat Marine, and we're really thrilled with the things they're doing. So we've got a good, well-rounded person there. I'm glad he could come and talk to you. If you want to look at the job description I've got there, I'll send them with you. See if you think you'd like to try it sometime. Not me, but it's a good description. All right, we can go on down the list. We just have a couple of other things.
Yeah, it was still Bob was up.
Yes, Bob was working. And
Fenderson's Makeup Hotel, I think, was next.
yeah, one of the things that I wanted Bob to do was to talk about where we are with regard to the quote mega hotel Benderson, the comprehensive plan amendment. It's been awfully quiet lately, but I think he has some good information for you specific to one area. And why don't you come on up, Bob, and let them know what we're up to.
Thanks. By the way, just an observation. Having Kevin here wasn't intended to be an endorsement of him. SKA is by charter not allowed to endorse political people. And so he was here, and I think he did a good job of saying what the job does. And so please don't interpret that as an endorsement of him. Okay? So there's two things left that I was going to talk about. One of them is called the Condo Voluntary Rebuild. And it's a comprehensive plan amendment. It's a big deal. And it started almost 2 years ago. And one of the condos south of here called C Club 5, which is it's a timeshare with 43 units and 52 weeks a year. So there's almost 2,000 owners of that. And then they have a manager. The manager hired an architect to help them change the comprehensive plan because they wanted to rebuild their condo. And by the way, that happened to be Mark Smith, our commissioner, who's now not sponsoring that anymore. But the staff took their request and asked us to work with them on it, and we did. Now, here's the kind of quandary. If you have a multifamily residential or even single family, and you want to rebuild, fine, just comply with the existing current zoning code. And of course, it's upgraded from what it was back in the sixties when a lot of these condos were built, but nonetheless, build, if you want to, just rebuild, just build the code. And you can even ask for special exceptions or variances, or what have you. But, and sometimes it goes well. The Marriott is a timeshare down there on the Crescent Beach. It's, I think, a pretty good neighborhood of people, and they did a good job on it. What these people wanted to do was they said, well, we'd like to rebuild, but we don't want to provide proof from an engineering point of view that there's something structurally wrong, corrosion, stuff like that. We don't want to do that. But we do want to rebuild, and when we rebuild, we don't want to comply with the code. What? Well, no, we have 43 units. The code only allows 26 units per acre. Okay, but we don't care. We're grandfathered in. We want to rebuild anyways. But, you know, and we said, well, the whole purpose of this was to slowly upgrade the key to the building code. And the only exception to that was supposed to be if Mother Nature came along with a hurricane, wiped it out, then the reconstruction plan for the county says, and Catherine worked real hard on this, that you can rebuild to your existing footprint, okay? If you had a 2-bedroom with a 10,000 or 1,000 square feet of, there, you can rebuild that. Oh, that's not, no, that's not what we want. We want to voluntarily be able to rebuild our condo only to the number of units. And tell you the truth, when us, SKA, and the condo council and the SKA coalition heard that, we said, sounds like there could be a lot of wiggle room in there and some unintended consequences. So somebody could build what looks like a 14-story hotel, because there's a 14-story condo there now, and then change their ownership rules so that they can make weekly or maybe even daily rentals if they wanted to. Make it a condo hotel, kind of like the mega hotels that we've been fighting so hard about. So we were pretty nervous about it, and we pushed back. We spent a lot of time working with the staff on that. And they came up with a proposal that is, still has a lot of gaps or unintended consequences in it. But we sat here and looked at our navel and thought, well, wait a minute, there's 5 commissioners. One of them started this whole thing, and the other 4 are mostly in the builder's pocket. So we probably can't stop this, because it would take 2 people to stop a comprehensive plan change. So we said, well, for better or worse, we'll work this so that it is as painful as possible to do it and as constricted and controlled as possible. So we said, you have to have an engineering plan. The county commission already said, no, you don't have to have a proof that you need to rebuild. You just have to want to do it. And then they also said that they weren't going to control the size of the units, like how many bedrooms or how many square feet. Just if you have 43, you can have 43 again. And by the way, even though you have at-ground parking now, will allow you to build 2 floors of parking from grade up to 21 feet. And then you can build your number of units above that. So you could get up to 45, 50 feet above grade easily. So that all sounds kind of weird, but you know, we said we're opposed to that. You need an engineering plan. You can't just build what you want. And we also said, no special exceptions. You know, a special exception was like, I don't like 45 feet, I want to go to 85 feet. We said, no, don't do that. They said, well, we'll agree to no variances. You know the difference between a variance and And the special exception, I didn't really either. I asked them, they couldn't tell me. But there are different regulations on those. If you want a variance, which would allow you to build bigger, have shorter setbacks, it can't be at your request. It can only be something that exists and you want to build, and it's not your fault. It's not like you tore it down and you want to build it back bigger. So they're already precluded from getting a variance to do just that. So it wasn't much of a concession to agree no variance, but they didn't say no exceptions. So last June the 20th, there was a world's longest planning commission hearing. We went at 5:30. At 9:30, we're still sitting there. And finally by 10:30, they'd heard our testimony and heard C Club 5. And the most amazing thing happened. The commission, the planning commission, voted 8-0. No, we don't endorse it. I couldn't believe it. I had like a heart attack that night. Because, you know, there have been rubber stamping things on mega hotels for quite a while. And this is the cousin of a mega hotel as far as I'm concerned. And the staff was very sympathetic. They stood up and said, I've talked to the lawyer. You're right. We all agreed to exclude special exception. When we recommend this to the commission, we're going to say that. So I don't know what's going to happen, but the commission said no, 8-0. So I wrote to them today and I said, so when's this going to go to the BCC? I can't hardly wait to see what they do with an 8-0 no. And because it's just a recommendation. And they said it's going to be September the 11th. That it's gone to the commission. Okay, September 11th. So guess who will be there? We'll be there. But I did have one observation. It is noticeably after the primary between Niels Relsberg and Tom Knight. And I don't know whether Mark will vote no against it, but I think Tom Knight would vote against it and it would kill it. So I don't think they're going to do it. And I've had a couple of people in the county telling there's not going to be anything happen in August. They're all waiting until after the primary to find out who the new commissioners are likely to be. So that's good news, and we'll see what happens when you can guarantee and take it to the bank that we're going to be there fighting against it. But I started down this path saying we're already losing 5-0. Let's just make it so cumbersome that maybe nobody will want to do it. But we'll see. And this is a comprehensive plan, so this is just an approval to send it to the state to get state review by the Department of Commerce and then send it back. So this has got a ways to go yet. And I have one more thing to say about that. This is the most ironic thing I've ever heard. A couple of days ago, one of the 2,000 owners at C Club 5 called the SKA hotline, and Catherine called her back. And she said, what is this about rebuilding my condo? I don't want this done. And I said, maybe you should go talk to your manager, you know? And she said, well, there's a whole bunch of people that feel like that. And I said, well, tell Mark Smith and tell your manager to stop this foolishness. So we'll see what happens, but it is what it is. But you know, what can I say? We're trying. Okay, the last thing is to do with the mega hotels, the memorandum saga. So as you know, there's a comprehensive plan amendment countywide to change it from 13 units per acre to unlimited. Unlimited. It's crazy. And we've been fighting that. So, and they also have to ask for special exceptions that say that it's not going to encumber the traffic out here and not encumber hurricane evacuation. There's a bunch of criteria that are required to be met. So one of the things is they have to ask for a special exception for height and setback. So SKA hired a lawyer about 4 months ago to say, we disagree that they should be asking for a special exception right now. Because the one they had expired in October of last year when the judge said, no, this is illegal. Remember the Lourdes lawsuit? So there's a county regulation that says you can't act, you have to wait a year before you can reapply. That's October of this year. But nonetheless, they had a workshop on it in January, because last December, when the ink wasn't even dry yet on the lawsuit ruling, they said, we want to reapply, and the county commission said, sure, no problem, go ahead. And it was really funny because Catherine and I went down and testified. We had to go down to Venice for that meeting, but they said, we said, wait a minute now, the rule says you can only get a waiver of this 1 year delay if you either it's an injustice or it's an unsafe condition. It's explicit. That's the only two things you can do. Well, Catherine stood up and said, wait a minute, this is the result of a court decision. How can it be an injustice? And we said, what's unsafe about not building a hotel? Nonetheless, they didn't do any findings of fact, and they voted 5-0 to let it go. So we hired a lawyer, wrote a really good letter, and we sent it to the county attorney and said, you're crazy. You passed an ordinance with no finding of facts that your actions are illegal, and we're going to take it to court at the right time. And the county attorney said, we're not going to answer you. So what we have decided we're going to do when these special exceptions for all the mega hotels come back for height and other stuff, we're going to include it in the record, so it'll be part of the record of that decision. And they can, when we get ready, somebody can appeal it back to the judge and say, this is just BS. And so we've got a really good letter, and the assistant county attorney told our lawyer, we're not going to answer because we don't have a good answer. So I think they're kind of screwed on that. Luckily, they're in the process of running the clock out because it's almost October. But we didn't spend very much money, and we scared them enough to wait, I think. The other thing that's going on is that Benderson, in support of both the comprehensive plan and the special exceptions, has said, we don't want to do a real traffic impact analysis. Even though they're required to, it's a county ordinance, but you have to do it. And it's supposed to look at the cumulative impact of not just one, but 4 hotels and all the roads and how it will impact emergency vehicles and hurricane evacuation and you and us, our daily commute. And instead, what they proposed to the county planner was that they do an ingress and egress to the Benderson Hotel in the village on that back street. And that's it. Not the other 3 hotels, not any of the other roads, just the ingress and egress from that little street into the hotel. And, you know, I read that and I thought, well, first it took me 2 months to find it searching around. But the county objected to that. And so they refiled another one. And interesting on this one, they said, it's not for the comprehensive plan, it's for the special exception. So I don't know sure which one it's going, but we hired our lawyer to write another letter, an objection letter, saying this is not an acceptable plan to analyze the traffic impacts. And our lawyer says, you have a really good case. And he's talked to the Department of Commerce, the State Department that has to approve this. And they've said, that doesn't make sense. It violates barrier island regulations and it violates hurricane evacuation regulations. duh. But, so we're gonna file an objection letter. He's gonna be done with it in a few weeks. And it's not very much money. And we got the coalition, the Siesta Key Coalition, to jointly fund that. And so we're trying to get some private donations to supplement. So we're not gonna spend a lot of money. I haven't asked you because I don't know how much it is yet. But, I think it's a good case. And that's another thing that we will put on the record. I keep emphasizing that because when you appeal it to the 12th district, the only thing the judge can look at is the record established as findings of fact and law in front of the county commission, okay? You can't write new stuff. So it's really important, for example, when lawyers took that 2 years ago there, the only record the judge could look at was the record that SKA and the coalition established in front of the commission. As well as she got them to accept her DOA hearing record, which was the state court administrative court. So it's really important you establish a record. It's kind of like, this is it. Speak now or forever hold your peace. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna spend some SKA money that the legal fund collects as part of our annual solicitation. And if you want to contribute, we'd be happy to accept it. You can send it to the Environmental Defense Fund, it's tax deductible, or you can send it straight to SKA, and we'll gladly accept any donations. This is kind of a change for us. We had told Loris we weren't going to compete with her Protect Siesta Key, and so it's now been 9 months and we haven't competed with her. But now we're saying we need to get a few things here in the record, and it doesn't appear anybody else is doing that. So step up. Here comes SKA.
In case it comes up, I've noticed in the last, couple weeks, and I don't know if it's the last 2 days, I ride my bike around Siesta Key a lot. And I thought, that I read some about this, and I'm not as informed, near as informed as all of you, but I thought, there's a traffic study going on right now. As you noticed, there was a lot of, down near, the Stickney Point Bridge, all like Midnight Pass. I do a loop like Ocean Boulevard the whole way down to the end of the key. There was a lot of places that, it's a traffic study because I've seen a lot of them. So in case it comes up, I thought, oh, well, that's great. They're doing it at the least busy part of the year. But, in case it comes up, make sure you press on the timing of it, because I thought that really stinks.
That's nothing we're doing. I don't think the same thing that Benderson's doing, but who would know? They're very tight-lipped
Just in
about it.
case it's.
Benson likes to use Kimberly Corn.
Yes,
Alan Mayo, there was a principal of that.
That's true.
And of course, there's the highly funded Alan Mayo's campaigns, like that. And they found that there was no traffic at Stickney Point and Highway 41. Those of us who sit parked there from time to time say, this is an incompetent corporation.
there's a parallel legal activity going on. You all know where the promenade is proposed to be and that traffic light they put in that they haven't turned on yet. They can't turn it on until the county okays it. There is a lawsuit filed right now by a CSP resident. You've seen him here at times, Jim Wallace, and Ralph Brooks is his attorney. They filed a lawsuit against Benderson at the promenade, and they said that they never did study the traffic on Stickney Point from 41 all the way back to the island, because that road, as well as the North Bridge, is part of the Siesta Key traffic system, and you have to study that blockage on it, like by a traffic light, and find the impact on Siesta Key. And that was part of Lourdes's decision, was the judge said Stickney Point is part of Siesta Key from a traffic point of view. So it's there's actually a pretty good pilot case going on right now. And there's a first hearing on it is in September. So, we'll let you know what happens on it. The Lourdes's decision was really pretty helpful, and if it carries water down there at the promenade. It'll certainly carry water against the mega hotels out here. Anything else?
I understood you say that, the POCC vote on the timeshares attempt to change the comprehensive plan would be in October. But I didn't hear you specifically say.
September 11th is what I hear.
I'm sorry, September, right, after the August primary.
Yeah,
But what about Henderson's proposed amendment, the comprehensive plan vis-a-vis the big hotel?
unsettled. It hasn't even been to the planning commission yet.
So that looks like, I mean, the big concern right after Lourdes' success in court was, would they be able to push through comprehensive plan amendment before the election in November? And it looks like they won't be.
I think they're not gonna be able to. And I think Tom Knight scared them.
Okay.
I think they said, I don't wanna rock the boat and influence the primary that might let the incumbent lose to Tom Knight, who has been against the mega hotels. And Mark Smith has been against the mega hotels, so that would be the only two we need. So, and this was one of the senior managers in the county told me nothing's gonna happen until after the primaries. Because they're afraid to rock the boat and get Neil in trouble. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, we'll keep fighting a good fight for you.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Yeah.
I have one more thing I want to say. We're going to go forward that kind of touches real quickly. Mary Tetzi is right here. She has written to us and she has written a letter. She's one of our members in the south end of the Key, and she's going to work with us a little bit on developing some additional input from not just members, but from anybody that lives down in that area, all the way to the very south end. It's one of the areas that they're not going to be repaving the roads for a while. But that, you know, everybody that rides their bike, anyone that tries to get to the south end, all of the people that come and go, it's very dangerous. It's dangerous because people do still do some drag racing we know that. People are riding those little electric carts that don't have driver's license. There's all kinds of things. But Mary, who's sitting here, she can just raise her hand if she wants to. She has been writing to us, and she is interested in developing a survey of everybody we can get, you know, by email. We can do a Survey Monkey thing where it can be digitally done. And so you might be hearing more about that. I think she's gonna talk with us some more, probably on the board. And I'm very interested in some of the things that Mary has developed as far as some of her suggestions. So we have a rising star in the membership here on the south end of the Key. And I have another one at the back end too, Stephen Lexell, which I'm awful glad that he's here too. So I didn't know if Mary, you wanted to say anything or not. And if you want to, you're welcome to, but if not, that's okay too.
Well, it just occurred to me that several years ago, somebody called me from the TST Association and wanted to ask me what the concerns were. I spent 30 minutes probably on the phone with him, and I thought, gosh, this is not a very good way to do this, right? And so, I mean, he's gonna have to call a lot of people.
Right.
So, I thought, you know, if you just go, so people call me all the time, and they go, oh, what do we do about the sidewalk? So I direct them to who to email. And I think, well, people in the county are getting all these individual emails from people. But what we should do is come up with some survey that says 73% of the people are concerned about this. And, you know, and so they could be more directed towards our concerns. And I think the south end of the Key, we don't get much attention from 16 Point South, except for the tourists. Right?
Yes, and there's a lot that needs care. And we talked on the phone a little bit about taking care of the beach renourishment down there with the mega trucks that we're gonna do.
Right.
And that worked out really well.
Right.
And it's one of those things we worked on, I think, over Christmas and New Year's in Orlando, talking to DEP. And the way we did it, everybody was happy in the end. Another good story. But Mary, I love your idea about getting a collaboration of priorities, basically getting a survey going. And if you are are willing to do that, I think we have people in our membership and on the board that'd be very interested in developing that. Anybody would raise your hand if you think that's a great idea. I do too. I do too. Yeah, because it really would save time, get it directed. Thank you for doing that, by the way. This has just been volitional and a great thinker. Thank you. Anybody else? And we will, if not, we're gonna let you go eat. How about that? We'll see you next month then. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Hey, Ken.
Here we go. I found the button.
So,
Couldn't find the button. I'm just looking for that. Yes, that's great.